What's up, guys? Welcome to Whiskey. My name is Jeff. This is a channel where I offer my thoughts and opinions on a specific whiskey, and if you stick around to the end, I'll be giving it a score as well. That sounds interesting? Hit subscribe down below. And with that out of the way, let's jump into our review. Today, we're looking at the Glen Scotia 12-year-old 2021 seasonal release. Stick around. Alright, so we're looking at a Glen Scotia today. I've done a few reviews of Glen Scotias on this channel before, and I have to say that generally speaking, I am a fan of the stuff they're putting out these days. And it's kind of an interesting case as a distillery because they've gone from something that was pretty obscure just a few years back, and honestly something that wasn't very well respected, to one of the biggest up-and-coming distilleries out today. Now, up-and-coming is kind of a weird term to be applied to these guys. It makes them sound like they're a new distillery or something. They're absolutely not. They've been around since like 1832 or something. And you know, of course, they've seen their ups and downs over the years, decades, centuries. But you know, I'm not usually one of those channels that does a deep dive into the history of a distillery, and that's largely just because I don't find it that interesting personally. And there's plenty of other channels out there that do find it interesting, that cover it in a much more thorough and honestly better way than I ever could. Anyway, that was a weird tangent. All of that was to say that basically this feels like an up-and-coming whiskey, even though it's a really old brand, largely just because they've had this very sort of meteoric rise over the last, let's say, 6 years out of obscurity. So yeah, anyway, this is obviously a 12-year-old whiskey. It is their 2021 seasonal release, and it's been matured in first fill bourbon casks and American hogshead casks, and it's been finished in first fill Oloroso hogsheads and heavily charred American oak barrels for 1 year. So bit of cask play here. And of course, with first fill bourbon, first fill Oloroso, heavily charred casks, we can obviously expect a lot of cask influence here. And, you know, that's okay with me as long as the cask influence is well done. Now, Glen Scotia is a hit or miss distillery for me. I'm a huge fan of the Victoriana. The 15 is a good one. I've got the 18 on the go right now. I'll be reviewing that, I guess, in spring or summer. Stay tuned for that. But there are some misses in there. I've got a single cask on the go right now that isn't doing very much for me. And there's also the 10-year-old Bordeaux, which initially I really liked. I scored it really high on the channel, but as the bottle went down, I fell less and less in love with it. By the time I finished it, I wasn't really a fan. Similar thing happened with the port release from the year prior. So you never know with Glen Scotia. But yeah, with that said, let's jump into our review of this one, see what it's all about. And in the meantime, if you could kindly leave a like down below, that'd be greatly appreciated. So Glen Scotia isn't always consistent with specs, but we do have a good one here. So our ABV comes in at 54.7%, which of course is very healthy. We've got non-chill filtered, and we've got natural color. So well done. Nice natural color to this. Our bottle's okay. I think it's, you know, it's nothing special, but it's decent. The box actually initially fooled me. When I came across it in the store, I thought I'd stumbled across an old dusty treasure from like 10 years back. Obviously, I didn't. It's a brand new box, but yeah, bottle's okay. No special feelings about it. Color scheme's nice. 3.5 out of 5. Now, we don't have non-chill filtered or natural color on the bottle itself. We have to look to the box for that. It should be here. We have some tasting notes on the back. We have a fair amount of information with regards to all the casks they use to make this stuff. So the info's okay. The look is fine. So I did add a touch of water to this. I do think it needs it. Let's try the nose. So lots of oak, oak, and more oak. Oak spice. There's some baking spices. There's definitely loads of cinnamon in this. Coffee, toffee, caramel. Orange oil. We have chocolate orange. We also have kind of like a dusty mustiness, like this boosty old attic with no ventilation. Some sweet pears in here, some red fruits, some apples, and a bit of like sharp vanilla. This is a good nose. I like it. Now let's try the palate. Thick texture. We have a very warming and spicy arrival. Black pepper, sweet chili, cinnamon, cardamom, some fennel, some herbs. It's very fat and malty. We have like coffee and toffee and malt and chocolate. There's some red apples in here, some sort of like mulled wine type notes. And again, that sort of drying mustiness. And now our finish. Gets more herbal, gets more meaty. Actually, kind of a meaty whiskey here. Almonds, pistachios. There's some orange peel. There's big orange peel in this, lots of orange peel. We have sea spray. There's chocolate, there's red apples, there's some sweet sherry notes in here, and more of that fat maltiness. Our finish is pretty long, actually. This is a hard whiskey for me to wrap my head around. It's definitely not the whiskey I was expecting, and honestly, only now after being open for several weeks is it really starting to open up. It's for sure a whiskey that benefits a lot from water and time, I'm telling you that now. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Every time I come back to it, I kind of have a different opinion. The good news is that this one is kind of going in the opposite direction of the Bordeaux and the Port, which I loved when I first popped, and then less and less as the bottles went down. This one, it's the opposite. I am liking it more as the bottle goes down, as the whiskey opens up. So yeah, this one is growing on me, but I'm still not completely sold on it. But, you know, keep in mind, this whiskey is still evolving. It might get better or worse as time goes on. We don't know that yet, so it's always important to remember that scores represent a moment in time with whiskey. But yeah, that said, this is a good whiskey. It's not a great whiskey, but it is good. So we'll start with what I like. I like the meatiness in here. I like that fat maltiness that I described earlier. It's got a very like malty, warming character. And then if you take that maltiness and you combine it with the chocolate notes and the coffee notes that we have in this, it kind of reminds me of chocolate malted barley, which is the kind of barley they use for stuff like Fettercairn 16 or Glenmorangie Signet. Now, this is not as good as those whiskeys, and it's also not made with chocolate malted barley. I just kind of like that the profile kind of takes me there. It reminds me of that because it's a style that I really enjoy. Now, this is marketed as a seasonal whiskey, and that actually makes sense. We have a lot of very rich, thick, warming, wintry notes in here. So there is some cool stuff in here. There's some stuff that I enjoy, but there is stuff that throws me off as well. That kind of like fusty, musty, dusty, drying oakiness thing. That's something that I can and often do enjoy in whiskey. It can add an extra sort of like element to the whiskey, but I find it overbearing in this one. And we also have that orange peel note that doesn't really work for me. Now, of course, like orange zest, super common note. You'll find it in a lot of whiskeys. It's something I usually enjoy. Once again, it's a little bit overbearing here. It's too bitter. It feels like you're chewing on like a full-blown orange peel. So we have that mustiness, we have that orange peel note. They do kind of throw off the balance for me. And beyond that, there's too much stuff in this. There's too much cask forward, cask influence in this. Now, we do have some distillate in here, but you know, it's a lot of first fill bourbon, first fill Oloroso sherry, these heavily charred oak casks. So they kind of blanket everything. They kind of take over. There's nothing that's really like crisp or clean or like that, whatever the fuck that is. So this one's not really to my taste. It's not my preferred style of whiskey. It's one of those whiskeys, you know, I like it, but I could kind of take it or leave it. It's not nearly as good as something like the Victoriana, in my opinion. Score is going to be 83. It's competent, and if you want one of those like cask forward, rich, malty, warming whiskeys, this one could do the trick for you. Just be ready for some bitterness and some pretty heavy cask influence. Now, once again, I want to stress water and time are your friends with this whiskey. You know, it might be your cup of tea. A lot of people seem to like this one on whiskey base, so maybe I'm missing something here, but it's not for me. So our value here is not going to be too good. This one costs more than the Victoriana. It costs more than the 18 in my market. I know that's not true in other markets, but here, this one costs more than the 18. It's almost double the price of the 15 where I live too. So I like all of those other whiskeys better than I like this. This is actually the most expensive Glen Scotia bottling I've ever bought, and it's a bit of a burn. I don't think it's worth it. I'm not going to buy this again. All right, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to help support the channel, please consider becoming a patron. Otherwise, you can like, comment, and subscribe. That is always appreciated. Now, I do want to hear from you. Have you tried our seasonal 2021 release from Glen Scotia? What were your thoughts? Let me know down below in the comments. Also, in the comments, you can let me know what you want to see me review next, and I'll keep it in mind for my upcoming videos. Bye, guys.